Greetings everyone, welcome to another code along episode. And in this script, if you've not tuned in before, is purely a portable fueling station that I'm coding for Cubicle framework. This is something that I can use personally on my framework. I mean my server, not my framework. I'd actually do like to code a framework someday, but that'll be in the future. Right, first things first, I'd like to say thank you to everyone interacting on my videos, and I do hope you find them helpful. I truly do enjoy making these, so seeing that everyone enjoys it is fantastic. Right, now first things first, right, well, second things second, I guess. There are a few things I did off camera, and I did record a session, and that just did not work out at all. So I'm back with a new recording, and hopefully this time it is a-okay. So just so that I can explain a few things, I had some troubles which we'll get to, but to start off with, in my private config I have config.fuelDecor and I set it. This is a do not touch value, so I'd rather have it in my private config than in a public config that anyone can change, right? CDN Fuel does, however, have it in their public config, but it is an open source script, so I understand why they did that. However, I will provide mine as a paid script and not open source. Well, probably I will at some point, but not for now, right? So that was one of the things I did. And we actually haven't set our fuel decor yet, so in our client main, wherever we used it, it didn't pick up, and that is probably also why we couldn't do the get fuel or set fuel functions, right? Because in our get fuel, we would assign the level to decor get float, target vehicle, and config.fuelDecor, which we did not assign. So this function, I'm pretty sure, could not run properly. Or this native, right? Natives are technically functions that are globally available within FiveM's framework. So we just refer to them as natives. There's a bunch of names for it, but in essence, it is purely just a function that returns a value in most cases. Okay, now you'll also see that I have c.fuelDecor, which might be confusing to some. However, you can do something like this, where I set c to equal config. So whenever or wherever we used to have config, we can now just put a C because it equates config. That's just an easier way of typing. It makes our lives easier, especially if we have to do a bunch of config variable calls. Now, back at the config, I elected to change a bit of the config over here. As you can see, I condensed the config.trailers table, and let's just run through it. So we used to have a trailer models specifically just to hold the model names, and we also had a locations, I'm lying, an info to store the capacity, and price. Now those are two different things, and the reason I want to condense it is because the less variables you leave people to change, the better, right? Because the less chances they have to mess something up. With saying that, I know my config is pretty extensive. You do want to allow people to customize a bunch of things, but in this case where we had to have fuel trailer in our info and that had to match our model name, it could be confusing, and that could be a chance or an opportunity for someone to mess up, right? So the less opportunities we provide, the better experience users of our script will have. Okay, The ped config, I'm super satisfied with that, so that remains unchanged. And in our refueling section, I changed quite a bit of things, right? We used to have one for nozzle and a separate one for pipe, and I believe types were within the refueling menu, and our refueling speed was probably also in our refueling menu. I elected to take them out, and this is a more logical approach to the variables. So we only have one fuel section containing a bunch of other information, like our refuel speed, a use types variable, which is boolean, either true or false, and this is purely for the Tebit fuel integration. We have a types table containing the fuel types, as well as our type default, which is our default fuel type. And then we have our use pipe variable, our little pipe table where we enable and disable it. We could probably delete that because enabled is functioning through that. Right, with our type and length, and we have a nozzle with a table containing these things. Right. Right. Now our config.stations, that is also more condensed, where we previously had we also had the spawn, which isn't the problem. However, we also had a locations separate from the models, but I don't want that. I want locations containing our stations, and each station has its own unique model as well as position. Right now my position is commented out because I've not set one up, and I'm not going to go through that yet. And I can't leave it open because an open vector 4 will just create an error in the script. So that is basically what I've done, and I've also gone through the entire client side file and renamed everything. Right. There is another thing I've also done with the change in our config approach. I elected, well, I had to assign our station models to stations and the trailers to trailers, which we then use to add the target models in our thread for interaction. And this is the little loop I came up with. So basically what it does for each entry for each entry we assign the data to data in pairs of our trailers info. So heading to trailers, config.trailers.info. So basically for each entry within info, right, we assign the number of the entry as well as the data of the entry to data and entry respectively. Then all we do is if data, so basically if it exists and is not null, then our trailers will obviously start with our first entry because entry would equal to 1 when this loop starts, and we'll just go through it. So entry 1, 2, 3, and 4, whatever. So for each entry in our trailers thingy, we will add the data.model. So we are extracting the model name from the data we are taking. So this is the data we are taking. This will be the number of the entry, and we're extracting the model, which is a string. Right, as you can see there, it explains to us data.model is a string of whatever that is. Right, and entry would be a string, which is fine, I believe. we could alternatively do, I like to do j is equal to 1, and we'll just do j. Oh, that doesn't work. We'll have to do entry and entry. I haven't tested this yet, so let's hop in server and get it tested out. So ensure INFT. And let's get this cracking view trailers. That's fine. Purchasing it, that's fine. We just check. It does give me an import error. So let's see, why does it do that? Contains, okay, probably because we changed our config setup. In our create trailer function at server main 67. Alright, let's head over to our server main 67. Actually, now that I think about it, we have not yet changed the config names in the server files. So let's do that real quick. Create trailers. Actually, in variables, I'll do this. So client main variables, copy that. I like my script looking nice and neat. So trailers starts off empty, and then we just go through it, assigning the trailer models. Obviously C over here will not pick up because we have not yet declared C to be equal to config. Now it is sorted out and it should not be a problem anymore. Right. Just quickly scanning through all of this so that I can... Trailers, there we go. Like I said, just quickly scanning through it. You see, here's the problem. Trailers dot info model dot capacity. That could work. That could work. Let's see, just quickly scan them. That should be fine. Okay, usually we have to stop the script, give it a few seconds, and restart it. Okay, no errors there. Nothing here yet. However, I'm not going to repurchase a trailer because we already have one, so it won't make sense. Right, let's hop out of this car and get this tested. Right. Tech nozzle, fantastic. Everything is working A-okay. Except for on the car. How come? Because we have an error. Client main 809. Most likely due to our config change. 809, which would be in this line. So fuel.pipe.length, fuel.pipe.length. Okay. Now let us just find that, but I want to delete that. Okay, so none of those types are left, so that should be perfectly fine. What I do want to do is t/clear nos to delete that little thing, and we restart our script. Perfectly fine. Grabbing the nozzle seems fine. No error again. But what? Something isn't doing what it's supposed to do. Right. This is obviously due to our config. And over here, fuel.pipe.length and fuel.pipe.length. Dot enabled. Let's just see if that is truly what I called it. Pipe dot enabled. Yes. Fuel pipe dot length. Yes. Fuel dot nozzle. Fuel dot nozzle. Honestly, I cannot tell you. So let's just clear the prop again. Restart our script. Go over here. Take the nozzle. Okie dokie. And refuel vehicle. There is something I want to tell you about, and there's something I like to do. Right. As you can see, our menu on the left, we've always been struggling with the release nozzle on refueling. And we trigger a little pop-up UI once we try to set the fuel amount. This is also something I edited. I changed this to a number. And right, but what I want to do is I want to take this dialog, and instead of our interaction opening that menu you see there, I just want to go straight to a dialog, right? I don't even want to struggle with anything, because that way we can head into our things and, you know, grab everything we need to. When I say things, I mean into our input dialog, and we can grab all of the data we need in one simple button click, right? Because when we click that button, it'll gather all of the information and distribute it to the necessary variables. Whereas now we are relying on clicks and scrolls and a bunch of separate interactions to set a bunch of variables, which is obviously causing issues. So if we can limit the amount of interactions needed, or reduce is the word I'm looking for, amount of reactions needed to basically distribute the necessary info, the better. So the less interactions, the better. Right. I just copied that because I want to head in here and just change that. We are working here with the fuel config, or maybe fueling CFG. Maybe. I think that's a bit better than fuel config. Fueling CFG. Sure, let's stick with that for now, at least. Okay, heading over to our functions. Right. Over here, this input prompt function is our little input prompt. Previously, we had an input there. However, I changed it to number. Our max is going to be 100 and minimum 1. Okay. And we have a checkbox for refuel to max, but we would like to have another checkbox for release on refueling. Maybe release nozzle on refueling so that it is more intuitive, I guess. So that when people read it, they know exactly what they are doing. Okay. We'll have a select and multi-select. So let's get that done. Right, that would be for our fuel type. So type, it would be a select, label, fuel type, and we will have a default is equal to c dot fuel dot type default, and then what else will we have? Label, I guess. Yeah, we have a label, that's fine. Options, that's a good one to have. So options is equal to a little table. And what will our options be? Our options would be config.fuel.types, right? Config.fuel.types is a little table. So it matches perfectly. Right. Value, label. We'll just stick with that. Description, placeholder, icon required. Neither of these are required. However, we could do check it is false over here, and over here by default we will have it true. Okay. We already have a default, clearable, searchable, max selected values. Options would be a table, which is a value, and label. We'll just do values and see if that works. Right, so the select what other information would we like to have for it. We have a label, that's fine. We have options, don't need a description, don't need a placeholder, don't need an icon. It isn't required. We are not talking about disabled. We have a default, and yeah, let's just keep that at that. Okay, so we pop up an input, and this is the information, right? Now, if our input is null, we just return, right? Because remember, we are just this little menu will be our entire thing, right? Refuel menu. This would be our entire fueling menu. Okay. Okay. Input 1 would be that. Maybe we could do a default here as well. Default is 1. Maybe we can. Can we? Number, input, number, default. Yeah, we can. Fantastic. Okay. And then just let me check the checkbox real quick. Date range, time, text, area. Input checkbox disabled, checked. That's perfectly fine. Alright. So if input is null, then nothing. Let's just go through it real quick. That would be input 1, and that would be input 2. Right? So, I see a logical error over here. Right. Input 1. So if input 1 is null. I mean, it can't be, because our default is 1 and the minimum is 1. Right, if it is 1, then select field type no. So this is specifically for, this is for checkbox to refuel to max. This is why commentary is important in your coding. Okay, let's run through it real quick. So if input 3 is null, then just set it to false, else if it is false, to max is false, otherwise to max is true. Okay. Now, if to number, let us just put this in front of this because we'll go through the functions logically, through the inputs I mean. So to number input, if the input is null, or the input is less than 1, and okay, I get why we did that first. That was fine. Let's keep it that way because we need to check the to max in this if statement. So if we are not feeding to max and the values have not been set, then we return an error. I doubt we'll ever get to returning the error because our input physically cannot be null, nor can it be less than 1. It's absolutely impossible. But what we can do is else if target vehicle is, or target vehicle to max is true, then, right, target vehicle dot f amount. Let me just double check the things real quick. Just over here, I want to check something. Target vehicle, fuel level, fuel amount, to max, fuel type, new type. Well, that is fine. Well, that's fine. That is fine. Okay. If amount is the amount of fuel we want to put in, that is perfectly fine. If we are fueling to max, actually it won't matter here, so we can remove that. Actually, we can keep it this way. Let's do that. So if amount just goes to 100.0. And in here we'll intervene with an else. So we have this statement. Otherwise, if we've set the to max to true, we just set the fuel max to 100. That is fine. Otherwise, if to max is false, but it is more than 1, obviously, then that just becomes to number of the input. Okay. Now we just need to do this for the others. The other variables. Right, so to max and release nozzle on refueling. That is input 4. If input 4 dot checked checked. Did I spell it correctly? Copy it. Yeah, I did. Well, let's just roll with this. Else end. Okay. If the checkbox is false, we say detached fueling is false. Otherwise, detached fueling is true. Right? Super simple. So we've got something for 4, 3, not 2 yet. So what will we do? Over here, we will do 2. We will check if it is null, which I doubt. I actually have never used a select option, so we will see options. Could be Boolean, number, or a string. If it is null, then target vehicle.nType. nType is the new type of fuel, is c.fuel.type default. Otherwise, we assign it to input 2. Or assign input 2 to the new type. And that should be that. Right, so this is the fuel type selector. And I guess over here, this is the detached fueling checkbox. And I don't need this fueling menu. Right, we don't need it anymore. So this entire thing, I'm just gonna delete it and fix whatever needs fixing when that occurs, right? So I'm gonna copy the input prompt and refuel underscore menu, I believe was its name. Refuel menu, maybe. Find only one occurrence of it. So we will paste our input prompt. So whenever we trigger this event, we just do input prompt. We could, however, cut that and put this inside of our input prompt, right? Why am I doing that? Because if we cut this and we go to where this event is being triggered, we do something else. Instead of an event, we could do an action or a function. Now let me just look at target options. On select, export, event, and command. On select is a function. So maybe we can do on select is a function. Triggers input prompt. right? And we will have something similar for QB core. And I believe it is called not a function, but an action. I believe. I'm not sure. So let us check. Go to QB target. I know this episode is getting quite lengthy now, but this is a very important step towards our success. Add target model. Let's see. Action. Yeah, action is a function. So let me just check. Action is a function. The action replaces the event and it is optional. So whoopam, sorted. Right, so this should not be triggered anymore, and it is not necessary because all of this is now sorted. Right, input prompt. Let's go to the function and just put our little debug statement right there. And that should actually do it, right? Cancel. Why does it do that? We ensure it. It pops it up, right? Oh, we don't want that. Refuel vehicle. I see now. So all of that for absolutely nothing. But it's fine. It is fine. Refuel menu. We'll just do that. Keep it simple. Saved. Oi. We'll have the little event. And I'll just copy that for the QB targets one. Input prompt. Don't have to finish typing it. Over here. Okay, client refuel menu. That should be sufficient. Right, if I do that, we do take nozzle, head over here, refuel. On that click, it brings up this thing. Okay, fuel type, we need to sort out, but that should actually be great. Right. Minor errors, I believe, but I think we can work with that. Definitely. I think I've achieved a lot this episode. Yeah, let's keep it at that. And we'll continue next episode. So, just on that note, I know in the previous one I was all about maybe I shouldn't struggle on camera, maybe I should. I've decided that I will struggle on camera. Probably not a lot, and I'll try to keep it at a minimum. This is kind of a way for me to show how I work through my problems and how I solve them. And this isn't necessarily a how-to series, so I like to show my entire process, and I'll stick to that as much as I see fit. So on that note, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your support as always, and I truly mean it. I truly do. But yeah, we'll continue next episode. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out.